Webinar is now live. So let me see. All right, so people are filing in now. So on the bottom, we have, you'll see a participant list. You'll also see a chat and a Q&A. So through the course of the evening, as presenters are speaking, you can go ahead and ask questions in the chat, or have a conversation in the chat, ask questions in the Q&A. Those can either be answered on the fly by the panelists as they're talking, or they can also save them for the end for the discussion following. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Which I can't find how to, I switched to my daughter's computer and now I can't find anything. All right, there we go. All right, welcome everybody, and welcome to USC Graduate Architecture Alumni Diaries. I'm gonna share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, okay, great. So I'm gonna recommend that everybody switch your little view screen to gallery view so you can see all the panelists. For everybody joining us, thank you for being here. We're joined today by a number of USC Architecture graduate alumni, recent alumni that moved on in their careers, here to talk about 101 things they learned in architecture school. We're actually going to be short of 101 because we've got 2 presenters that weren't able to make it. But then we also have a number of our esteemed students here on the panel with us as well, who will be engaging us in conversation at the end, as well as my associate director, Selwyn Ting, who's also here to, partner up with me and keep the peace. So if any of you get out of line, watch out for Selwyn. He's a tough moderator. So the purpose of this event was one, we're really trying to kind of focus on how we kind of continue to build a studio culture or a virtual school culture in the current environment, which I know this has been one of the most challenging things about the past semester in terms of how to stay connected with one another. So trying to keep, and that's why I tried to make this event closed to USC students only, USC students, alumni, and faculty only, and did open it up to prospective students. So I do know that we have quite a few prospective students in attendance as well. But trying to keep it closed so that it feels a little bit more internal and a little bit more exclusive to us, where we can continue these conversations, but also in terms of keeping us engaged with our alumni, but also giving us a chance to have our alumni reflect on where they're at in their current careers and how those opportunities reflects back on their experiences at USC. So with that said, I'm going to move forward here and introduce our panelists for today. We have some really, really fantastic guests with us here. First is Banaz Farahi, graduated in 2013 with an MAAS, is now an assistant professor on the tenure track at Cal State Long Beach Design. Banaz had actually Banaz and Fallon both are part of my first ever studio that I ever taught at USC when I first started teaching. Banaz actually came into the first class a couple of days late, and we were having a conversation, and she came in and sat down in that conversation, and we broke and had a bathroom break, and she leaned over to me and said, "Hey, so where are you from? What year are you?" And I said, "I'm the instructor." So that was fun. So I'm never gonna let her forget that. Josh Foster here, who is joining us from KFA Architects here in Los Angeles. Graduated exactly just over a year ago, right, Josh? 2 years. I'm Asian, but I'm bad at math. So yeah, it's 2 years ago. Josh is also a talented athlete and a former Division I college athlete, played wide receiver at Columbia University where he did his undergrad. And so I do know that we have another Columbia University athlete in our MARC 1, or we call it M+3. I believe Madison Canby. I don't know if she's here today or not. Aaron Herrera, who is joining us from Tesla. Graduated in 2017, translated his digital modeling skills to another industry that probably makes a lot more money.
Maybe. The stress, I don't know if the stress is worth it.
Golnar Iranpour, who cannot be here, but she's an associate at Gensler. Kevin Klassman, MARC 2017, project manager at Laney, LA. Fallon Lebowitz, MAAS 2013, associate at Co-Architects, who I just today, after going through her presentation, realized connected her interest from when she first came in, and she told me that she was really interested in healthcare and health and architecture, and actually ended up doing that, exactly that. And so I didn't realize that until I saw the presentation today. Yang Li, who very, very talented guy who I taught in a seminar, in a studio, and advised as a thesis student, was an intern for me, and now works for me. So he's probably sick of hearing my voice. Morgan Mpungose, who could not be here tonight, but just graduated last year and got a job following graduation at David Adjaye Associates in New York City. Erik Narhi, MARC 2014, computational design lead at Buro Happold, who unfortunately I actually didn't know as a student, but I actually got to know as a consultant. So I actually connected with Erik because my firm was working with Buro Happold on a number of projects, and I got to know Erik through that process. Finally, Yueming Zhou, MAAS 2014, also a former student, former intern, and now a licensed architect with Adrian Smith and Gordon Gill Architecture in Chicago. So thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. Selwyn, would you like to say anything?
I'd just like to say it's really great to see the returning alum. Have fond memories of you all, and I can't wait to hear the presentations. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. So with that said, the way this format is going to work, I'm going to start the presentations, which are all set on an auto timer, auto advance. I'm not going to touch anything, and neither are they. The slides will advance on their own. They've all been pre-timed. The presenters will have to keep up. All of the current first years will be very familiar with this process because they had to do it themselves and understand the pressure of a timed presentation that moves without you. So Banaz, you're up first. Are you ready?
I am.
All right, let's go.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Banaz Farahi. I'm really happy to be here and be back and see a lot of familiar faces. I also have to say that it's really nice to see like generations of graduate students from USC because of the time that I also had, extra time that I had as a PhD student in the same campus. So thanks, Alvin, for initiating this. I'm really excited to share my journey. I think I have a few more seconds here. I am from Iran. I study architecture in Iran, and after I received my first master degree in Iran, I moved to US to study my second master degree in post-professional degree at USC. And after that, I worked, or during that time, I also worked in Alvin's office at SDA on a number of projects, from competitions to different type of experimental or practical projects. And then after that, I did my PhD in the last 7 years. And during this time, I have built series of installations or interactive projects that really look at intersection of fashion, architecture, and interaction design. So a lot of this project, it looks at how we can incorporate robotics and interactive technologies and computer vision into the substrate of materials in order to see or influence humans' perceptions, ways of communications, or in fact, social interaction. Oops, the video is stopped on my end, but and so I've built series of installation and architectural scales and number of projects in object and fashion scale. One of the lessons maybe I'm going to talk about the things that I've learned was really look at an understanding design research, from physical form finding to taxonomy and behavior study and computational design. And I have to say a big shout out to having Alvin really pushing me in these type of directions. These are some of the studies that I did through those years in 2012, 2013, to really study material properties and their behavior, both physically as well as in computational space. This way of thinking really influenced, like I would say, tremendously my own practice. And during this time, I also had an amazing mentorships. Obviously, a lot of these people moved around, but I've been really fortunate to have, for instance, individuals such as Manuel de Landa, who is a really big thinker and really open up new way of thinking about the discourse of new materialism. Or in fact, I took every single class that I took with Scott Mitchell to make sure that I have a sort of knowledge of fabrication and digital fabrication in the workshop. This is my thesis project, master thesis project under supervision of Alvin. And one of the things that it was really amazing working and learning from Alvin was really kind of dream big and sort of have a higher ambition. This is an installation that I built for my master thesis, that it had a Kinect motion capture camera, so the dancer could dance with the kinetic structure. So the structure moves based on the bodily movement of the dancer. The other thing about this sort of journey was really learning that studio culture is about working your ass off. So it's not about like you're in the school. So the graduate school, it was all about all-nighters, putting music on and sleeping and working all nights and really trying to make sure that everything is working. So that was sort of a big lesson, being in that sort of a studio culture, also seeing other schools such as SciArc and how other students in architecture kind of keeping up this sort of culture. The other aspects of this was obviously crit cultures, which was really fascinating because sometimes crit culture could be really, really harsh, but I really do believe that this type of crit culture can be essential for development of us as designers, as creative people. And this is my master thesis crit session, which went really, really well. So sometimes in other disciplines, they don't have this type of harsh criticism, but I really do believe that this is essential for architects and designers and artists to some extent, because it helps us to really see some of those criticism from different people's angle. And I think, is it stopped? Oh, the other, by the way, the previous slide was Alvin in the my supervisor. And then one of the other things that I learned was how things come together. I literally during this time learned to become a maker. I really enjoyed learning about how objects, how things, how machine works, how various things can come together. One of the aspects of my growth was I spent a lot of times in the workshops. In fact, I brought an idea to my first studio, and Alvin told me that, okay, that sounds really good, but go build it. And I found myself in the workshop. I didn't know how I can work with different tools and machines, but this was really defining my true identity. Through working with machines, I was finding my true self, because many of us have this sort of cultural assumptions that a woman shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. And I feel like I overcome a lot of those assumptions by spending a lot of times with the tools. I became someone who was fascinated about robotics, but also being in USC campus allowed me to network with different peoples. I was very fortunate to work on a NASA-funded project with Professor Buro from engineering department, and help them on various type of visualizations on robotically fabricated on the surface of the moon and Mars. Which was a two-phase projects that we were involved in. So this was sort of fascinating to really see that what USC can bring for me. And then eventually I end up finding myself pursuing my PhD in a School of Cinematic Arts. And one thing about being architects, I realized that we have such an amazing sets of skill sets. We are not only familiar with 3D modeling and digital fabrication and techniques of filmmaking, and we are really, we are very on demand, because we just have a really amazing sets of skill sets from architectural education. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'll jump right in. So I'm Josh Foster. I graduated in 2019 from the MArch program, and I went to Columbia for my undergrad. Currently, I'm a designer at KFA on the board of SoCal NOMA, and do some work with AIA as well. So I'm really excited to be back here. So the first thing I learned in architecture school is knowing your why is the first step of design. Really knowing what it is that you're into, what it is that draws passion and inside of you is really important for me. From when I first started architecture, it was always affordable housing and homeless housing. One of the reasons that I made my way out here to LA to study at USC, and so I did that throughout my studios. Currently, I get to work on those projects right now. Working on affordable housing projects in Willowbrook, which is right outside Wise and Compton area, doing 100% senior affordable housing in WeHo, and just being able to see that through, knowing that why makes going to work and makes doing what I do every day more passionate for me. The second one is sharing who you are is essential. I had the opportunity to be able to share who I am on multiple occasions while I was at USC, whether that was speaking at graduation or different spaces and events. But really knowing that bringing your humanity into work by sharing your why is something that gets often overlooked. And I think that consistency leaving school as well is something that's really important. Being able to share who you are, being able to have people feel like they can trust you, have people feel like they can know who you are, really helps out as you move throughout your career looking for different opportunities, or just being able to connect with the people that you're working with or designing for. Moving on to number 3, stand firm of what you believe in. I'm sure Alvin and many of my other professors know that I was the one that never really shied away from talking about what I believed in, what my culture was, and how that really informed my design. From projects that was focused around a really Black aesthetic, from focus around different places and spaces, and then seeing how that transitioned over to my career now outside of the office, more on an activist lane, whether it's through AIA, the Jedi program, whether it's through helping out physically on the street or helping out at the NOMA camps, being able to moderate and talk in these different panels, just standing firm from what I believe in the fact that diversity in design needs to advance a lot more steps than it is. Knowing your weakness is a strength. Math, mythbuster, not all architects are good at math. I never was. It was a struggle, and I think I've seen Anders in the panelist, in the group over here watching, and he was my structural professor here, and it was definitely a hard one for me. But then as I got into the field work, I tried to use that as a learning experience. So actually going into sightseeing projects while we're in construction and having to figure out things on the fly, having to do math and remember what the slope formula is and do things like that. And then also being able to see that happen in real life definitely was good. Maximizing your strength is a skill. The thing that I was good at was just about materiality and construction and actually seeing things built and going through that process. So I was able to find my niche once I got into the professional world in the construction administration side of things. I'm working on three projects in construction right now. Thankfully, I was able to get tossed into that really early. And so whether it's working on RFIs, doing detailing, seeing 3 of these projects right here that I'm currently working on now, and just going home through that process and connecting with the general contractors, with the consultants, with the subcontractors and the clients, and trying to make the designs that our office did together. 6, relationships are essential. You have to cultivate them. Have a little shout out in these pictures. There's some people who are panelists. You see Kevin Heaven over there, Aaron in the picture over there on the right. And yeah, just the relationships you're making as you're in graduate school are going to be really essential to practicing how to make these relationships outside. Here you see the project team here. We hang out outside of the workspace because we all became friends. We decided to really make this project go. So we went to Kings games together, and we're also in the field together, making things happen, making things work. It just makes that relationship day to day while you're working not feel like work. Prioritizing your priorities should be a priority. There's a lot of different things that I have my hand in right now, whether it's through the different organizations, whether it's through my own design work, through a startup that I found that promotes minority entrepreneurs, or just different things. You need to realize what it is each day that you're going to do so that you don't burn yourself out. This is what just this week looks for me. I have to have everything color coded. I have to have each thing in a certain way so that I know what I'm looking at, know what I'm doing, from everything that I'm working on with work, to even as you see wedding planning, which I'm doing right now. That's something I've added to the schedule there. So I have to know each day what I'm doing so that I don't burn myself out. But it's really important. A quote from a book that I read way back in the day, of Mice and Men. The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, so you have to be flexible. You think you're gonna go by your schedule, but then it just blows up. And then that day you realize that you start getting emails from your contractors saying that this is urgent, this is due today, this is due today, this is due today, and the entire schedule that you thought you had for that day really isn't gonna work out. So you have to also be flexible and just take things as they go and try to get back on track as you can. But it's really important to prioritize so you kind of have that pathway that you can jump back onto as you start to float off a bit because of things that pop up as urgent. Number 9 for me is your impact does not need to be constrained to architecture. Everything I do outside of the office really isn't architectural related. For the design work that I do is actually website design for minority entrepreneurs. A lot of small businesses that are looking to ramp up their websites. I taught myself how to design websites, so that's one thing I do. And Mint, which is the startup that I began, and basically we have different magazines. We have a mentorship program. We do different things that kind of uplift the community and just give voice to a lot of different minority entrepreneurs and professionals. So our architecture taught me to be creative, but I decided to expand it beyond that. And number 10 is to fight on. It's really, truly a family. Being a USC Trojan, wherever I go in Los Angeles, I always seem to run into another Trojan, whether it's in the architectural field, whether it's in the technology field, or anything else I do. And so just make sure you keep those relationships together and just continue to fight on.
Thanks, Josh. Anyone hear me? You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. My name is Aaron Herrera. I graduated in 2017, digital model at Tesla. It's been a pretty incredible journey. That was fast. A big thing that I kind of took from architecture, it's like really an overarching field, and so you can learn all these programs. You can kind of do a bunch of different fields. You know, you have MAAS, for example, who does fashion and kind of branches out of just architecture. These are, I'm gonna talk about my work a little bit, and these are something that I've worked on as a team. And they're on every, you know, Model 3, Model Y, like wind turbines. They're like one of my favorites. Again, Tesla is a collaboration, but these are something I'm like pretty proud of. Can't really say too much else about that. Lesson for this one is that you can move someone. So if you've ever been inside a Model 3, it's like, it's pretty exhilarating, and you kind of design an experience. So it's really awesome to design the, to model the experience and to be in that. So these two things also have part in, along with my team as well. Going to school, I took a world building class that kind of just branched out. You know, it branches you out of other programs. You know, you go into like Lightroom, Maya, sketching, like digital painting, and just bring that back to architecture. Like I said, it's an overarching field. This is a project I did with my friend Jerry. It's a VR project, and just it kind of just shows like all the little different things you can do and accomplish with architecture. So this. Sorry, my thing froze. Okay, make things. I took a class with Scott Mitchell, and it was really cool just to fabricate things and just continually make things. I'm really inspired by physical objects. And you see I did the physical model in the top right, and then I have these two chairs. I actually bought a glow forge recently, so that's like a laser cutter. I've always been into laser cutting, and like you have to go through prototypes and just going through the different steps to get to the final iteration. So like I said, I just got this. It's really cool to play with and just kind of make things. Like I said, I love making things digitally and physically. It's kind of my setup. So these are just kind of the first pass of things I made. You know, a little veggie holder, just random physical objects. I hope to, like, you know, probably make this into a shop or something and sell, or do something with that. So design always, you know. One thing that's also awesome is traveling a lot. You know, like USC. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, so coming here was like a big move for me, and I like kind of expanded my horizons in traveling. So one on the left is called the Buro, the middle is in London, and on the right is in Berlin. Traveling is a huge part of architecture. You should see as much as you can. You can experience as much as you can, and that kind of segues into my next thing, which is to see differently. I love taking my camera out and just going to shoot random things, just, you know, kind of trying to get a good shot and just kind of seeing the world differently. And architecture, I think, is a perfect catalyst for that, because you can, you know, look at nature differently. You can look at different angles, all that. The next lesson I learned is dedication, focus, and work. Architecture is very hard. It's very demanding. And I know in the pandemic, it's like, you know, everyone's kind of stuck in their place, but I kind of made my place into my own like little workstation. So work out of there, that was just a snippet of that. And anything can inspire you, really. I love modeling random digital aspects and just kind of getting inspiration out of nature or amorphic shapes. And there's a few of that coming up here. These are just random things, things like modeling and just kind of amorphic, getting into just more motion graphics. So I'm kind of all over the place in terms of creativity. I just kind of like, if I don't understand something, I kind of like exploring it, and you know, doing anything from VR to digital automation to painting to all that. And lastly, you should surround yourself with amazing individuals. So anything and everything I do wouldn't be possible without the amazing team I have, the people that you meet along school and along the way. And, you know, it keeps you humble, and so you can grow with your team and with everyone else. So thank you, guys.
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Klassman. These are 10 things that I learned from USC to Laney, LA. So a lot of the same ingredients: coffee, late nights, working late. It's all part of it. Lesson number 1 is how to draw a line, whether that's an actual sketch, which is, this is a few glimpses of my sketchbook with Graham Miller, and and really just learning more about sketching. Obviously, that's something that never goes away. That's something that carries over into the professional world. So at Laney LA, this is a collection of plans, whether it's, getting right into graphics, first year, second year, and third year, just really the evolution of how graphics influence design and how you visualize it and share it. So these are a few graphics that are animations or just 2D drawing, but really conveying what is the design about and really creating sections and voids where what's really telling and worth telling the story of the design. Lesson number 2, design with models. So as we all know, designing with models, whether it's a 3D printer and it's a click of a button or it's handmade, it's all very essential to the learning process and the design process. So Laney LA, this is something that doesn't go away. Obviously, we started with the balsa wood when we first started. We bought one of these preform resin 3D printers, and then now we can just crank them out with a click of a button. So sectional models are very helpful. Overlaying plans and diagrams really tell the story of what each of these designs are about. So obviously small, big, whatever it is, these 3D models is great to have. Paint the main picture is item number 3. So these are just a collection of some of the renders I had from first year, second year, third year, and really just kind of conveying what is the big picture of each of these designs. So how does that roll over to Laney LA? Obviously, we use it a lot. This is how we tell a story. With our office is still pretty young, so how do we really sell what we envision? It's really through storytelling, through renders. That's really how we sell it to our clients. That's what get things showing our ideas, and it really comes to life at the end. So obviously, when you're first starting, it's something that really conveys your idea. High tech and high touch is something we deeply believe in at Laney LA. How this kind of translates, these are some of the furniture pieces that were made at USC, but we use something, ArchiCAD is the software we use, and we use BIMX. So it's really how to visualize not just 3D model, but the structural, all the systems that go in each of our homes. So these are some overlays of some drawings that are 2D, some 3D renders, and also just some 3D models that we can really spin around and take our clients through. Lesson number 5, design with sections. Obviously, this is something that you learn in architecture school, but it's something that never really goes away. These are just a collection of some of those sections that were produced in grad school. And these are some of the sections that, whether they're posts just for social media, whether they're posts to convey ideas to clients, it really helps tell you the story on a horizontal cut, or sorry, vertical cut through your building. Visual communication, I deeply care about visual communication. Just how do you tell the story? The question came up of how do you tell your parents, your grandparents, and how do they understand? You want to be as clear and precise as you can, and that's something that we deeply care about as well. So whether it's a GIF, whether it's a 2D static drawing, how do we show what the project's about, what's the ethos, and how do we really tell the deep idea within either a GIF or one image that someone can really wrap their head around and understand what each of these projects are truly about. So these are just a few of those examples that are being shown. The next one is lesson number 7, which is architecture begins with an idea. Obviously, this one's more about biophilia, how things, nature can kind of erode and how it takes over time and how that affects longevity towards our structures. This is one of a client we have who lives right by the ocean, who has an ocean view, and he loves sailboats. So really how to incorporate that, how to use parametric design and grasshopper to really come up with these unique forms. The power of 10, you guys might have already know about and heard about it, but really scale, whether it's big scale like New York, and really getting down to the region, destination, and place, and how do you have your thumbprint or footprint in each of these locations. These are just some 2 of our quick projects. Obviously, a lot of 90% of our projects are in the South Bay, which is this grid tight area. But we are just trying to make one impact at a time that slowly can hopefully have an impact on the fabric of the South Bay and hopefully larger Los Angeles. This is the next one, which is just really how do we create intimate spaces? These are just, once again, a collection of some of the renders that were produced at USC in my time there. And Laney LA, obviously, it's all about how do we create these unique spaces. That first one that popped up is our studio space. And obviously, it makes it enjoyable to work there. But obviously, some of these other ones are a collection of some of the work that we've done, mainly residential. So we're really trying to create these unique spaces that people would love to enjoy. And obviously, during the pandemic, a lot of people are spending their time within these spaces. Last but not least, lesson number 10, studio culture. Obviously, we all know about studio culture. This is where we spend most of our time at. And these are just a collection of images, whether it's traveling with our students, meeting professors on your way, GASA presentations, and obviously graduation is a time to celebrate. Last but not least, Laney LA, how that translates. And really just these are a collection of the video. Obviously, maybe we're selling the surfer life too much, but we are right down the street by the ocean. It's something that we are a young, vibrant group, and we really enjoy it. So with that being said, we really appreciate the invitation to this, enjoy this, and thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fallon Lebowitz, and I work at Co-Architects. I'm an associate there, and I am currently a project manager on large-scale healthcare buildings. I just want to say thank you for having me and everyone for being here. And these are the things I learned in architecture school that apply to me today, and some pieces you can hopefully take away for yourself. So pinups. Pinups are essential when you're in school. They're kind of basically all that you do, but that's very important also in the professional world. A lot of offices don't do pinups very often, but it's a point in my firm that we have a wall constantly filled with drawings at every stage of the design, and that we're constantly critiquing each other and finding, problem solving and all of that. So on the left is an example of what we do in the office. Inside on the wall, just conceptual design at that point for my building. And on the right, post-COVID, is on Miro. So we use Miro as our new wall or pinup board. I'm not sure if you use that program, but now we're deep in CDs, and you can still see it's a collaboration tool. The next thing is a concept. Concepts are driven into you at school constantly. And it's also something that you need to carry into your professional world, whether it's a large project or a small project. It will carry your project team if you have a good concept and a clear concept. It'll go from exterior to interior, from interior to exterior. Your client will get on board. You can stay on budget. You can convince people of your ideas. You can make the project exciting. So this is an example of the project I'm working on. So it's a solid void concept, and you can see on the right that the interior is carving away. And yeah, so now the team is on board with that, and the interiors can reflect this exterior concept. Mentorship. This is also very important while you're in school. Your professors are your mentors at that point in time, but it's also important to have peer-to-peer mentorship. So all these people on this call right now, they can be your mentors going in your future, and also to look for mentors as you move through stages in your career. So maybe not just now, but in the future. And use your resources. So in academia, you have everything available to you. You can go to the library, fabrication shops, field experts, anything, lectures. As a professional, it's the same thing. They're available, but you have to speak it out. So you have to go to conferences, read publications, join network groups, have consultants. So you just have to do the legwork. Same thing that was said before is design and section. It seems obvious, it's something you do in school all the time, but in the professional world, when you have tight deadlines and really demanding clients, it's pretty common to get caught up in plan and elevation. So even if you have a building that's just stacked, try to find an opportunity to look at it in section and design, maybe even just ceiling details. For example, this is a building I worked on. It's an outpatient center. It's basically a stacked building, but we carved these light wells in the middle to make this dynamic space for the employees. So it's not something that a patient would experience, but the doctors and nurses get to share this unique space. And the work you do now sets the trajectory of your professional future. So this is very true for me, and I would argue for MAAS as well. So grad school and your career are one in the same. I studied, my master's thesis was on sensory processing and occupational therapy. And a couple of years after I graduated, I was able to present my thesis at the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture in La Jolla at the Salk Institute. And then it was peer reviewed and published as a research item. And recently in just 2020, I was awarded with a healthcare design award. And it was based on my career, based on my experience at USC and my thesis. So it's followed me my whole career. Drawing is the universal language of architecture. Hone your hands, get used to drawing your thoughts. When you're in the field, you're gonna have to draw in a moment's notice a detail. When you're talking to a client, you're gonna have to explain your thought in your mind on a piece of paper. When you're in a room with multiple architects, you're all gonna be drawing on the same piece of paper and just communicating. It's the easiest way to design. It's a little bit more difficult now with COVID and communicating, through the screen and sketching, but it is possible, and it's something to keep doing no matter what. If you're in a meeting, just draw out the notes. You don't have to necessarily write them out. Just keep that fresh. And when you have international clients, drawing also helps a lot. Embrace technology and keep up with the latest innovations. So in school, you're surrounded by the latest technology, but as time goes on, new tech emerges and you need to stay up, keep up with it. So at our firm, we pretty much do everything. We do AR, VR, scripting, building analysis. So this is an example of a physical model and then a VR model, where the physical model inputs into the VR form, and this is an operating room, so we can present this to the client, and the surgeons will take the pieces and move around, the room, and then they can put on the VR goggles and try, out a surgery and see if it actually works. Precedents don't have to be world-class buildings, just study the environment around you. We live in a great city. Just walk around, look up, take pictures, and take pictures and save the pictures and catalog them. And then you'll see in, a few years' time, you'll have your own library of dynamic images that you can reference at any point. So these I just pulled off my phone, but I think it's really important to just create your own library of images and have it saved in a way that you can look back and reference for a detail you may not need now, but you may need later on, or for material that inspired you at one point that you need to reference later on. This is my most important thing, is environmental psychology matters, especially in healthcare. Built space is more than just design, it's an experience. So for patients in healthcare, you want to make sure that when they go to a hospital or cancer center or surgery, that they feel comfortable, and to create a comforting environment is important, and also environment that functions and makes the employees happy as well. So for example, I had to fight to get these windows in this room for a CT scan. It's not typical, you'll see this. This is really hard win for me, but it was to, help with reduce patient stress in an environment that's very, you're gonna be there not willingly. So having access to daylight is nice. So this comes full circle because I did a parking garage in Alvin's studio in grad school. So now I'm working on a parking garage as a first point of entry to a cancer campus. And so we made the point to make it a dynamic experience from the point of car to the front door of the cancer center, so that you have a moment of respite before you receive your chemo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yang Li. Thanks for having me. So when I look back to the experience I had since USC School of Architecture, I think one thing I've definitely learned is how to design. And I think on top of that, I also think the thinking of design is more valuable. So I really like to apply that to our daily life and career. So design your future. In design, we know that it's an open question instead of making choices. So in design, everything is about being creative. So sometimes you need to create your own options. You create your own answers. I'm going to use an example to show you my personal story, probably to answer the question of whether you should go to a small boutique office or a big corporate firm. So in this particular project, that's a team of these two different kinds of companies. And that went very well. So I think that can kind of proves that it doesn't have to be a choice between A or B. It could be A and B or something else. And also in design, we know there's no correct answer in the design, or there's no correct solution. But in our daily life, we are always told that there's a good path or the best path that you should take. Like for example, to be a successful architect or to be a successful designer, the best way is to enter a big corporates or a big star architects firms and stay there forever or for a while at least. I would say this is more like being small part in the giant. It's definitely a good way. I've learned a lot from my experience in this giant, but I think it varies from person to person. So don't let anything else define who you are, or it doesn't have to be like anybody else. It could be anything within yourself. For example, a lot of people like Adrian call me grasshopper young. But I would say don't let a tool define yourself too. Everybody thinks that Grasshopper is like a facade generator. So when I was in interview, a lot of people told me that we are not doing complicated facades, so we're not using Grasshopper. But in this particular example, you can see that we use it more like a technology to inspire us and generate art. So it could be anything. So you are the person know yourself the most, the best. So I think everyone needs to spend some time define who we are. Like maybe it's not like a short-term thing, and it doesn't have to be in the short words. I will say I'm really lucky. Right now I'm in, after some years of exploration, I think I'm in a really good path for myself. This is a project I'm working on right now. I think it can fully use all my skills and my abilities. So I hope everybody can spend some time to find the best the best path for yourself. But in this process, I think there's some attitudes we need to maintain. One of them is being aggressive, meaning like being active. You need to behave like actively doing a lot of things without being asked. In school or at work. So in the this project, I want to say like this opportunity I found, and also I helped form the team. So this without being asked. And this in this project, I was doing a lot of business development, which is not like a typical designer will do. But as long as it's interesting or it's useful to you, I think it's worth doing it. Also, it's also very important to stay humble. I think we have passed the days that the one architect knows everything about the project. So every complicated project requires like a big team from different knowledge spheres. For example, this project we're working on, we have a lot of teams working together for this one single building. And I can't imagine without this coordination effort how we can achieve this by ourselves, like as one team. So also, I think it's very important to do whatever you're good at, like keep doing it. Identify your strengths and just keep polishing what you are really good at. I mean, in the last few years, I had great opportunities to do some design consultancies for different teams in terms of Grasshopper. And for example, in this particular project, I really use this as an opportunity to advance my skills, to explore like different plugins, different techniques I've never used before. So don't think that you're already familiar with one thing. There's always something that you can explore. But another thing is to do something that you're not good at. For example, what I'm doing right now is not something I'm good at. You can probably already notice my English is not perfect. For people who never spoke English in my first 20 years, at least not in the daily life, I would say I'm really grateful that I have this journey since 2014. And I hope you agree with me that I've made some progress. And for that, I will have to thank all the people that have been very supportive and patient. And to design your future, I think it's never to say too early. I'm gonna share a story of the thing that I did. I'm really proud of, even for today. Is that when I was at school, I was a member of a student group who helped the school get a STEM designation. And for that, I would like to thank Selvin and other professor, faculties, and staff who helped us through that. This is super helpful for, especially for international students. So by doing this, we got this much earlier than other schools, and that helped me stay here for many years. And I would say also, it's never going to be too late. There's no more page after this because I think I've reached 20 slides limit. And I also hope I can add more slides in the future. And I believe it will never be too late. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Young. So I'm Erik Narhi. I'm a computational design lead at Buro Happold, and at USC was an MArch student with a particular interest in parametric design, computational processes, fabrication, but also more of the grounded ways that we apply computational design to the architectural process. So beyond just using Grasshopper for fancy geometry, what does computational design really mean in the AEC industry, and how do we really translate that into results in the built environment? So step one of what I learned in architecture school was how to use a computer. And this doesn't mean how to turn a computer on, how to press keys, how to open a program. This is really about how you deliberately use a computer to become your ally and not your enemy. So this is a focus on, we've got all these different programs we can use. It can become really overwhelming. And these programs are either an incredible blessing or a burden. This is something that wasn't imagined when computers were originally created, but nowadays it's really become a problem. If we open a computer and we decide to just download every app we want, you can be overwhelmed, you can be paralyzed. So it's how to use a computer deliberately to create processes that are intentional and that are advantageous to you. And you just see some examples of on stadium design, for example, how we use a computer as an ally, either to make processes more efficient, to analyze things we wouldn't be able to analyze without a computer, or to learn from the computer. So starting to incorporate technology like machine learning into our processes, where obviously if we didn't have a computer, there just would be no other option to get those kinds of answers. Which leads me to how not to use a computer. I mentioned it can be overwhelming. And I think nowadays, a lot of people, it's the 21st century, we all have computers at our desks. First reaction is, I need to do something. How can I use a computer to do it? And I'd stress that especially in architecture and in the AEC industry, the answer is often not related to a computer at all. It's using your hands, it's drawing, it's building a model, it's looking around your environment. Don't just lean on something like parametric design or emerging technologies or VR and assume that because it's the newest technology out there, it's the right thing to do, or else you'll end up with something like this. Of course, we've all heard of grasshopper spaghetti, and this is a ludicrous example that was created for a research project, but I think it really gets the point across. A lot of our computational processes, if we're not deliberate in designing the process itself, can become something like this. It can become a tangled mess that just becomes a burden and holds us back. So step 3, know your tools. That text should be white, but will live. So perfect example, know your tools. PowerPoint. Didn't know it, text is black. You need to know your tools. This is Ivan Sutherland. He created SketchLab, which is one of the original CAD programs. Of course, nowadays, Revit is one of the main programs that everybody thinks they need to know. But knowing your tools isn't just about knowing the one program that everybody's knowing or the one fad. It's about being flexible. And as an architect, it's about embracing tools that aren't necessarily familiar. So always just know all the tools around you and be ready and eager to pick them up. Also know how to create your own tools. We do not currently have all the tools we need as architects or designers or builders to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Nowadays, we can use code, we can use physical, anything that's around us. We can use these different things to create our own tools, and being an architect is all about creating your own tools to solve problems that are unique to the challenges that you're facing. So always make sure that you feel like you are equipped to create those tools on your own. Next lesson, you know nothing. This is a big one. This is one that I think was really helpful once I realized it in grad school. No matter how much energy I put into learning things, I was never going to know as much as the people in the organizations around me knew. So lean on that. Go to events, go to conferences, learn from the people around you. And most importantly, on the right-hand side here, you see a symbol for the Carpenters Trade Union. Lean on builders, lean on experts who actually build the buildings that you're designing, because an amateur carpenter who thinks that he's learning is going to know 100 times as much about how things actually are assembled as you ever will. So please lean on them, use them as a resource. Another thing, butterfly effect of good and bad design processes. So this relates to how to use a computer. It also relates to how to use your tools. It also just relates to the entire process of creating a building from start to finish. If you have good, clear processes, you'll enjoy the process, you'll enjoy the results. The team will probably be happy and get along. If you have badly designed processes, the opposite will be true across the board. So as designers, don't think that you're just designing a final product. Design the processes along the way to achieve that product. This is true, and Aaron works at Tesla, for example. If they didn't have good design process, there's no freaking way they end up with any of the cars they've ended up with, no matter how good the designers are. So make sure that you're designing your processes. And here you just see an example of that for at Crime of the Pacific, which you saw on the previous slide. Designing our process meant we were able to easily build that complex facade in an automated design manner because we knew the process from the beginning and what data we'd rely on. Collaborate openly. This is huge. So in grad school, I started creating scripts and sending them to my peers. I said, hey, I've got all these scripts that do this, that, and those, and said, hey, everybody in studio, which of these do you think would be useful? That eventually led to a TA role where I was doing exactly that for other studios, which lo and behold has now led into a lot of what I do at my current career. So a big part of this is Buro Happold has started the Buildings and Habitats object model. This is a completely open source code base for interoperability and describing objects used in the AEC industry that I'm extensively involved in and one of the have a leadership role in. So sharing and collaborating openly has become a big focus of what I do and a big focus of what Buro Happold does as a company and as something that puts us in a strong position with our competitors and with our peers. So make sure you're sharing and make sure you're sharing openly. Do not share just the one thing that you're really proud of. Share the things that kind of suck too, and talk about why they kind of suck and how you want to make them better. Number 8, find your giants. This has been touched on by a few others. Find good mentors, find good collaborators, find people who inspire you, and find people who have the career path that you want to have. Speak to them, learn from the process they've gone through, really pick that up and run with it. So I've listed a few here. David Gerber, who's a professor of mine while I was at USC, Al Fisher, who's currently the lead of the BOM, which I just was talking about, Monica, who's one of my peers, and then Ron, who's my current boss and also had a very rich computational design background. 9, Kaizen, which is constant small improvement, and the joy of small victories. So bottom left is the classic diagram for Kaizen, which is this iterative process to create small improvements as you go. Toyota started this as part of their manufacturing line ethos. But for me, this means as you're detailing, as you're working through design challenges, take the time to analyze what you did and to learn from it, to make note of what you could do better the next time and then put that into action. GitHub on the right you see is a classic example of that, where small issues are getting resolved, which leads to a better code base. And last but not least, know when to stop. So as architects, we have a tendency to want to tinker, keep working away at something until it's just buried into the ground. Know when your time is better spent on something else and when to move on. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Yueming Zhou, currently working as an architect with Gill Architecture in Chicago. To begin with, he not only resides in building forms, but also more in programming and realizing the actual way of realizing each project. So this is a recent competition we did. And we came up with a solution responding to site orientation, local climate, and circulation view requirement. So my focus was more on the retail podium on the bottom, which serves also as a main entry of the building facing the city public parks. We always initiated a project concept through like brainstorming on different options and ideas and came up with different stories and focus for each schemes. So most of the time we do have a stronger and preferred version, but we'd also include various thoughts just for communication with clients and also to find out their needs or preferences. We may all have the experience that an idea seems perfect one day, but it loses all the merit the other day. So studio work in school prepared me for iterations of design ideas and how to improve and finalize them. So this base understanding of creative process is very essential during my career. And this was a studio project I did during my master program. I explored the form generating from wave interference and realizing the form in solid materials. Countless iterations were performed to just find out the actual solutions and fabrication methods with CNC molding and vacuum forming. And this is another firm project we did, and the concept started from this local topological forms of land and water. The challenges has been on to distributing and arrange the programming to complete the story, but also to achieve functionality. I think the language and story were strong, but we lost this one, unfortunately. It's highly possible that you are not the first one who's been doing this. So it's a good idea to research for existing solutions and latest technologies and you can benefit from, and just to make sure you don't reinvent the wheel, because you just don't have to. In the construction document for project, we worked with the facade consultant we have just to find a way to efficiently build the portal inside a cable net wall entry. So we studied the 7 World Trade Center by SOM and the 20 Hudson Yards by KPF on the right, and just to learn from the beautiful details they have done and to make sure also the drainage and everything else works. Working environment is full of surprises. Emergencies and conflicts for sure. So being proactive and just open-minded to changes will be is very valuable for delivering the projects and also for your mental health. So it's almost like a personal protocol you develop for yourself for emergency situations. So this is a phenomenal project the office has worked on. So it's Wuhan Greenland Center. We originally designed to be 2,000 feet in height, but in the middle of the construction, it was cut to be 1560, just due to various politics. We have to come up with a different tower top design. So it's a big change, but we went through with that. And of course, finding role models. And also the more interaction you could have with your role model is the better. So Alvin and Diana were the instructors of my studios, and they were tremendously helpful at the beginning of my education and career, and also to promote yourself to more people. And again, Alvin has set up a great example of giving credits to everybody on the team. And essentially, this will be the path that people find you on Google and through the internet. So learn to teamwork. No matter if you work for a company or practice on your own, you will be involved in team working one way or another. So setting up boundaries, respect each other's work, and coordinate well are the keys. In the work, we constantly deal with our and clients, consultants, and communication is really essential. So most of our projects are big scale and mixed use, and this is definitely a oversimplification, but for example, we got team like the tower team, the side and basement team, the podium team, and each team have various like sub members who deal with all the parts of the design and detail and construction documents, and also the communication with each of the consultants divisions. And it all has to come together by the end of the day. So know your work personality helps you predict the efficiency and take care of your emotional need. So I was given this extract sketch diagram about human brain and AI integrated in each other and forming ultimate network of communication production. So long story short, I had to produce a short video in 2 weeks using Cinema 4D without any previous knowledge about it. So this is absolutely very like preliminary exercise, and it was more for marketing purpose. And this Taiji simple was exactly what the client asked for. But knowing and being not afraid of just learning and hopping a new technology or a new learning experience really helped me to going through this intense 2 weeks and to come up with something that we can communicate with the client, and most importantly, that we can deliver to him. And also it's very important to have a pressure release routine. So for me, I tend to play a little piano and doing some workout whenever I have time, because those just, engage your other muscles instead of the design muscles that you can have relax on while you do that. And you have to set up a boundary between your work and your life, because I think it actually helps you to, after a good relaxation, to go back to your work with more inspiration and more energy. And your life is the source of all your inspiration anyway. This is a little boutique museum in Chicago that Tato Anto renovated. From a residential house. It was beautifully done and was holding exhibitions constantly before the pandemic hit. Right now, I think they came up with different schedules and virtual ways of doing it, but life is your resource. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, presenters. That was awesome. That was really, really, really great. And Really exciting to see what all of you have been doing since graduation. It's kind of phenomenal, actually. Hang on, I'm trying to pull up the Q&A here because I do know that there's some questions that were, actually, it looks like they're all answered. Maybe what I'd like to do now, after you guys have all shared the work, is have everybody open up your mics and basically start a conversation here. For those that are in the audience, if you have a question, or even if you want to come on stage and whatever the stage is, we'd love to have you join. So if you have something to say or a question to ask, please either ask it in the question and answer, or you can put it into the chat. I think we just realized recently that there was an ongoing chat that we didn't realize some of it was all just only to the panelists, because a lot of the people on the stage here were having a conversation about some of the presentations. But I think, maybe if we can open it up now for the students who are on stage with us here, if you guys have some questions, and I'm going to pick on Shay, because as the current GASA president, which I forgot to introduce at the beginning, and I told her I was going to introduce her as the new GASA president. So now I'm doing it very abruptly in this manner with no real formality. So welcome our new president, Shay Mirzaei.
Thank you, Alvin. Hi, I'm Shay. Actually, I do have a question. First of all, thank you for the presentations. I really enjoyed listening to them all. But my question was, so between school and work, so I guess how did you get to where you are today? And that can go to anyone that would like to answer that.
Yeah, if you don't mind me hopping in, appreciate the question, Shay. I actually met my current boss through something very similar to this. He was doing, his name's Anthony Laney, and it's, I work at Laney LA, and he was doing a presentation of Generation Next, which Alvin also, I think you hosted, and I think it was the first one. So I was sitting in your guys' seat, well, technically not, because we're all virtual, but I was sitting in the main Harris 101, and I heard a bunch of presentations. A few of them definitely caught my eye. And later I had a friend who used to work with him, and there was a connection there. I remember seeing his presentation. I really liked what he was doing, and it kind of helped with that. So it was through the network of an old classmate I had who was 2 years above me, used to work with my boss. So there was a connection there. So it was through USC, but the first interaction I've ever had with the company or my boss was through something very similar like this.
Yeah, if I can take over now, Kevin. I'd agree. I mean, the USC network is huge. I actually got in contact with Tesla team Scott Mitchell, which is the fabrication professor there, and they were like, they wanted someone hired immediately, and I was in my second year of a third year program. So they're just always on my radar. And then I had a coworker that graduated a year before me, and that she worked at Tesla, so she was kind of an in as well. So it just kind of reiterates how strong the network is. Doing events like this is huge for advancing your career, and just getting to know people, and like, I mean, like they said, USC is just ridiculous. Like, they don't joke when they say University of Successful Connections. Like, it's astounding, really. So the more events you go like this, the better for you,
I can hop on that network train. That is the same way I ended up where I am now too. It was through a USC connection that I met at KFA. Didn't even put two and two together. The firm and what they did, ended up seeing them pop up at the career fair, and then ended up meeting two more USC grads that were working at KFA, talked to them, and it just all kind of clicked, and it just went off from there. So I actually started working there as an intern, going into my thesis year, and stayed on throughout my thesis year in grad school, and just have been there since. So yeah, that connection and network is always something that's strong. I mean, even to the sense of apartments. Kevin and his roommate actually passed down his downtown LA apartment to me and my roommate right after they graduated. So you'll find apartments, you'll find jobs, you'll find everything just by your USC network.
Yeah, I'll probably hop on the same train. I actually, out of school, I worked for a construction contractor, and I was a PE for a while in the field, but there's no design in construction once you're on the contractor side. So it got pretty boring pretty fast, even though it was challenging. And I got an email from a USC Connect saying, hey, I know you like healthcare, want to work in healthcare, you need to check out Co-Architects. And they have a very strong USC network there, so that's how I got linked up.
I had a quick question. Have any of you ever worked internationally in another country or done an internship internationally? Because I'm really interested in working somewhere else, kind of understanding their culture and just kind of immersing myself in that. But I don't know the process, and I don't know if any of you know. So.
I guess I can answer that question because I worked in China and USA, and I'm also like working in USA and also in China as well right now. So I think yeah, you're right. Like it's different culture, different kind of way of thinking, but also it's I would say very interesting to see like different kind of different kind of firms, different kind of culture, like thinking about the same kind of topic. Even in the country like China doesn't like in China, most people doesn't speak English, but still it's okay. You don't need to worry about like a language barrier or something. Like if you just apply, I think it won't be a problem. Because every firms like to have kind of like a diverse team. So it won't be a problem, and I do recommend doing so. It will be a valuable experience.
As somebody who has done so myself, I think one of the things that I would say is that it's really hard to get a visa in a country without a job. And it's a little bit of a catch-22 where a lot of times employers won't want to hire you without the visa. So it kind of goes both ways. But I think one of the things that is maybe more important is identifying firms or identifying practices in countries that you want to work for that are working internationally themselves. And so once a firm is working internationally, it's easy for them to make an argument with their government saying that they need visas because they work internationally. It's important for them to have an international staff. Right. And so identifying firms that are doing work internationally, even if they are based somewhere else, is a really strong point. Another thing, again, I would go back to the Trojan Network. And this is something that I've experienced again and again and again. I've been very fortunate to be able to travel and work throughout the world, is that literally every country, every city I've ever been to in the world, I've been on many stages, given many talks. At some point during the talk, I will say, any Trojans out there, and a bunch of hands will raise, you know, and I will be in anywhere, literally anywhere, New Zealand, India, China, Japan, you name it. And one of the things that you can do is look on LinkedIn. There's a number of Trojan alumni associations that are literally in every country in the world. And you go there and like, there's places that are you don't expect to have a huge Trojan following, and they do.
I'd also like to add that you know, it gets back to sort of the proactive issue many of the presenters were talking about, being fearless and being persistent, but also in many countries, they have programs for students still in their academic studies, and the visa issues are usually, not always, but usually easier to resolve if you're still a student. So doing an internship as part of your studies. rather than waiting till graduation to make that kind of overseas leap.
Is there room to ask a question?
I have a question. Thank you guys for coming tonight. So if you may have, what's the biggest transitional issue that you had when you started your career after education? Yes, that's my question.
I can hop on that. So after graduated from USC, I started first job at the RTKL back in the days. Now it's called Callison RTKL, Los Angeles office. I think one of the thing or issues or challenges I encountered during the early days of my career was that being a newly grad without much working experience, you will need to get to work with your teams quickly and to see how the project is getting how their working process is and how you can fit in as a member and what values you can bring in with your skills and techniques you developed and your design process you developed during school. So I think it will be essential for newly grad into the career professionals to demonstrate, of course, abilities to learn new stuff and also to actually be a team member and to contribute to the team on the actual project process. That was my experience.
Thank you.
First of all, excellent panelists. I mean, the work's excellent and the presentations are excellent. Knowing what you know now, thesis, do's and don'ts.
Yeah, great question, Mel. So for my personal thesis, there's only one regret that I have, and it's not fully proceeding with my original thought. I think, as you know, a thesis it's something that you should be really interested in, something that you're driven about, and something that if someone asks you to do it, no one even has to ask you to do it because it's something that you're so passionate about. So I think if you can find alignment of something that aligns with your profession and something that aligns with your love of life and something that you're passionate about, I think it makes it really easy to do. I think I think I was going on a route, I was redirected, and I wish I either pushed back or continued on that route because, to be honest, I think I lost a little bit of that drive for what I was working on. And I think it showed in my presentation and suffered as a project as a whole. So just that's my little key lesson learned from that.
I can just also kind of jump on this one. I think, yeah, I agree with the previous comment, but I also want to kind of echo what Fallon said in her presentation, which is a lot of things that we do as a graduate students, it would sort of echo out in our life. So in a way, I take this time for those of you who are right now doing your graduate studies to really sort of rethink what is possible because there is many possibilities. And I also want to sort of kind of echo sort of Kamala Harris dream big and really don't think that the assumptions that this is architecture or this is exactly what I have to do, but there is so many possibilities. As you saw in presentations today, there are many opportunities for us who trained as an architect. And I think it's up to us to imagine, to rethink, to see new possibilities beyond the horizon, that what it can be architecture and what we could do with our architectural education. So dream big.
I think I'd also add to that in terms of basically, I think one of the things with thesis is it's a real opportunity for you as a student to really establish your own personal identity in terms of distinguishing what your own interests are and what your, let's say, specialties are, or what you want to be known as a specialist in terms of when you enter the workforce, like say Fallon as the example, her thesis that involved healthcare, and Banaz looking at interactive architecture. Both of those two kind of spearheaded their careers as a springboard through their thesis. And the way I often talk about it is that whatever it is that you want to be known for, the narrower that scope is at that thesis moment, allows you to go deeper and allows you to kind of identify, you know, if you want to be known as, like every group you're put into, like if you say you're going to architecture school and you want to be known as a good designer helps separate you from the crowd when you're not with a bunch of architects. Once you're with a bunch of architects, then that's a category everybody fits into. Right. And then once you say maybe you want to, like Mel, you're interested in cinema and music and sound and how that connects with architecture. Once you get into that group of people, suddenly everybody who's interested in that realm is all the same. But what makes you special in that group, right? So then what makes you more, like each time, how do you narrow it, right? Like how do you make that focus of what you're doing more unique and more special, where let's say for myself, as somebody who's interested in computation and parametric modeling and the role of kind of technology in architecture, when I go to Acadia conferences, it's not good enough to say that, because that describes the whole, everybody in attendance, right? But then if somebody says, oh, I'm interested in form finding, or I'm interested in material systems, and they start, well, you should go talk to Alvin, or you should, you know, and so what are the things you want? Like I always position it that way. Like if you were at a conference on that topic, what is it that you want all the people at that conference to say, oh, if you're interested in that, you should go talk to Mel, because that's what his thesis was exploring.
I also have a question that follows on that. I know everyone say follow your dream, but how do you know if the path you've chosen is the right one to go, and where do you find the strength to follow through that path? And as someone who has experienced and arrived at where you are right now, do you have like a fallback plan if whatever you're doing now doesn't work out?
I would just say you'll never know that what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing. You're always going to have a certain amount of doubt that maybe you want to do something else. And I think the key to really knowing you're doing the right thing for you is the fact that you're doing it. Wake up in the morning, if it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do, and you're applying yourself and you're finding joy, like, you know, those moments of joy as you're working through it, even if sometimes it's incredibly challenging. When you get those moments of like that rewarding, oh, I overcame that challenge, oh, I accomplished this, oh, I did that. And it's really like driving you to push forward and to keep doing this thing, and it's getting you excited. Like, just that's how you know what you're doing is right. But you're never gonna, you're never gonna wake up one day and somebody's gonna just be there and be like, yep, you're doing everything perfect, you're exactly where you should be. Like, you just got to be true to yourself and keep pushing on what you find most interesting. I'd also say, like, don't base what you're doing off of, oh, this is what I think is the best for a career. Base it on, this is what is best for what I want to do and how I want to impact the world. And that'll kind of play itself out then.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd like to see it as maybe a series of doors that you pass through one door and you work towards that one door, and it enters you into a room with two doors, and then you get to carve your path along the way, and that there's always another expanded option and possibility to learn something new and go deeper in one direction or another.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just going to expand on that real quick. For me, it's just kind of like what makes you like happy, you know. You wake up going to work happy, and you know, the end of the day. And for me, I mean, yeah, my job is like stressful and it's a lot. But at the end of the day, when you see that product in the real, and it's like, being made internationally. Like I've seen, my products in person, and that's just like, it's so rewarding, so exhilarating. So you just kind of find the niche of, what makes you happy. It sounds kind of cliche, but I mean, it's kind of true.
I had a question. I know with COVID, there's going to be a potential of shortages on opportunities this summer. Do any of you have any interesting stories or experiences about where you were approaching a summer without concrete plans and how you turned it around in your favor?
Just starting to touch on that, I know a couple people have asked about with COVID and everything, that it's hard to get a job. And I know I've had people reach out as well who are going to USC and other schools. And I would just stress that as hard as it is right now, it's going to get a lot easier. And so what you need to do in the meantime is position yourself so that you're in the right place when people are hiring. It's not like suddenly people don't need architects. So just kind of look at it as, you're working for yourself. So in the meantime, you should be pushing what you're interested in, almost treating your kind of work and your personal time as your own thesis to build up a portfolio of a skill set and an interest that will then drive your career once you get to it. But a few months of a lull of that isn't going to make or break things. So I wouldn't feel like that means you have to jump into some career you don't want, or have to divert. So I'd say it's even more reason to apply yourself to what you're most interested in with the most energy possible.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I definitely agree. Use that time as wisely as you can for networking. Use that time to be able to look into different things that you may not have thought you were interested in. And while I definitely agree that you don't want to dive into something that you just have no passion for because you're trying to find the job, I would also say you might find something by trying a new opportunity that you never thought you would like. I mean, when I first got into architecture school back in undergrad, I tried for 4 summers in a row to get an architecture internship, never got one. I tried the first year when I got into grad school, didn't get one. But throughout those times, I ended up working in a nonprofit doing urban planning out in New York. I ended up working at Dow Jones in their global real estate department, completely randomly, had nothing to do with that financial media world, but I was able to transition in using my studies in space planning and things like that, and ended up getting a lot of connections there. And I ended up working at a gym during that time, and ended up actually meeting someone there that needed some work done for their house. So I was able to make some money and get some experience in that sense too. So just never be afraid to try something. Like Erik was saying, it's gonna go hold back up, but while it's not, use this time to just get creative in what it is that you're doing.
I think another thing right now in the current situation is to actually really take advantage of the situation. I know a lot of you have heard me say this multiple times, but like take advantage of the situation in terms of developing skills that employers need right now, because you guys as students right now are getting a chance to remotely collaborate and work on platforms that a lot of practices may not have that much experience working with, right? In terms of, there's a lot of people using Zoom, but not necessarily for the ways that we can use it in architecture school, right? And basically taking advantage of things like twin motion or animated, like Kevin's presentation today was a perfect example, right? It's a presentation that was video based, and because it was video based, not only were the diagrams animated, he was using videos, he was using multiple images. Yang did that as well, where instead of single images, he was using animated GIFs. Where he really took advantage of the screen in a way that you couldn't do in person, that you can do as somebody who's developing these skills. And one of the things that I'm actually trying to set up for this coming semester at USC for the grad program is, outside of your normal coursework, I'm trying to set up a series of workshops for filmmaking, and that filmmaking will take place in the form of workshop on animation, another workshop on animated diagrams, another workshop on storyboarding and narrative construction, and basically ways that we can think about how what you're doing in the studio or doing in your kind of normal course load actually has to be shared in a way that now has to be not only shared, but also, let's say, produced or collaborated through a screen-based interface. And that's something that is super valuable to a lot of employers right now, that if you can show them that, you have a leg up because they have people that may not be doing those things.
Hello. I have a question for Benas Farahi. I would like to know your ideas on how to get investment and funding for the project. You know, it's super important for indie creator in innovation and art.
Yeah, totally. So when I started doing this type of work, which is very extremely experimental, obviously I had to, in my first master thesis, I remember it was $1,000 overall, and I sort of managed to do it. And then after that, I started looking for various exhibition calls, art calls that it was around, that it was basically sponsored. Gradually, as I started building more stuff, obviously, and publish more of my work, then I had more opportunities. I've been approached by various industries like Adidas or BMW, and then later on by leading museums like Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago for commissioning works, which was a really incredible opportunity for expanding actually establishing my practice and hiring people and then working with a team of people. So it was a very slow process. Actually, back to one of the earlier question, it was completely fuzzy, unclear, and there was no clarity if this is gonna work. But gradually, as I was sort of moving toward building more projects and sort of showing my works in different places, people gradually support you. And remember, the change is incremental. The first commission maybe was a smaller budget, and as gradually I was getting more commission, it was actually getting to substantial proper commissions that I could actually hire 5 people and work with a big team of people on all aspects of the project. So it's definitely possible. It's really looking out to see what opportunities are out there, and there is a lot of possibilities. You might want to have to start from open calls for this type of things, and gradually, as you do more works, people would come and commission you. Yeah.
I have a question for Aaron. Hey, Aaron, I'm wondering, what do you see the connection between a vehicle and architecture? Perhaps I wanted to ask, I know people do architecture differently in different ways, in different fields. So if someone asks you, are you still doing architecture? What would be your response? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say to a certain extent, I am still doing it. It's just, I mean, it's so much more amorphic and like tight, you know, like we have to account for so many different things, a lot of engineering. I mean, I think there's over 10,000 parts in a car. So you have to account for like a lot of things. And, you know, if it's architecture, I mean, you have to like think about like, you know, window fenestration, and like you need 2 inches here or that. Car, it's just, it's a lot smaller scale, but I say it's relatable because it's still like modeling 3D space. You're still thinking about different like gap conditions, aesthetics. It's just a lot more amorphic shapes. If that answers your question.
Can I jump in? I love this question. I'm sorry that this is not related to me, but I would love to answer it. So yes, the question is like, what is architecture? Is architecture just construction of buildings, or can we see beyond the building construction? I really would like to sort of expand architecture to other form of architecture, to other forms that it could be called as proto-architecture. Perhaps what Aaron is doing is applying the principle of architecture to other built environments. It can be vehicle, it can be an object, it can be a furniture, it can be an interior of the space, or it can be a fashion item. So I think it's incredible skill sets that we have as an architect that we can use in other disciplines. And if we can actually understand what the skill sets we have as architects, I think, and use it in a more fluid way, it's just open up incredible possibilities for us. And I think we should really seize open that opportunities. I think working in many tech industries, including either like industries such as Tesla or like tech industries like Google, Facebook, they can actually, there is a lot of demands. And also apparel industries such as Nike, Adidas, they actually want a lot of computational designer that they help them to incorporate computational design into their design of their product. So we can really see that how architectural education could also be kind of extremely useful for other industries.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's a design degree, and I mean, architects just think about the world in such an extraordinary way that it can be applied to fashion, you know, Nike, cars, like legit architecture. Just, it's so overarching, you know, and especially at school, you learn so many different programs. Like, you know, you could become an architecture photographer from that, or you can become a graphic designer or a car designer. Like, it's the field is just tremendous, and yeah, it's exemplary. I agree completely.
Same here, and I think it's something that you can really see in, you know, not only this event but also our Generation Next event in terms of diversity of work and diversity of kind of fields that our alumni are going into after graduation. You know, one of the things I like to, like my own personal statement on architecture is I like to position architecture as an interrogation, expression, and materialization of value systems into the world. And so what value systems are is basically they could be the value systems of your client, they can be the value systems of your personal self, they can be the value systems of society, they can be the value systems of whatever, and you're either challenging them, interrogating them, you're either expressing them or materializing them. And so that is what architecture does, which then suddenly takes it beyond just buildings, right? Because I would also say that there's a lot of buildings that are not architecture. Right. And conversely, there are all these other things that they may not be buildings, but they are architecture because they do the things that I just described. And I think that's something that is really important. But I also think that that's also one of the things that, you know, we can see through this event is that, you know, the diversity of architecture, but also the diversity of the people doing architecture here, right? So like, you know, we've got people from all over the world. We've got people from all backgrounds, from all genders, from all orientations, working in super, super diverse fields that are, in the end, universal, right? Like in the end, it's all universal, and it's about people, and it's about our position on this planet, and our position in society, and what that means to us, and how other people contend with it.
Are there anything that you guys wish you got more involved in or pushed to do more of while in grad school that would have helped you now that you might not have access to now that you're in the profession?
Off the top of my head, I would say that I think I did a pretty decent job trying to take as much as I could from the university as a whole. One of the big reasons in choosing a university like USC is because of all the other great departments and all the other great places on campus that you can just draw from a lot of different peers. I think personally, I would have loved to have done some more in the cinematography school. Just learning about that, definitely being in LA and it being one of the top programs in the world here. I think that would have been really cool for me to dive into. But I spent a lot of time in Marshall School of Business, or I spent a lot of time in Price School of Public Policy, whether it's taking classes or going to their lectures, or just going on some different competitions and case competitions and studies that they had in their different places, and I really did get a lot out of that. I wish I had more time to do it in a lot of other different departments as well too. But I think just in general, just the idea of not being constrained to the architecture department itself can be really helpful to just learning more about what you're interested in.
And Chisoba, I think one of the things that's important to think about that, which is basically life in general, is like you get what you put into it. I mean, everything's that way, right? So I spent a lot of time living in London, and another city that's like that would be New York City, where it's a city, both are cities that I would say give you a lot, but take a lot from you. Meaning you have to really like put a lot of effort into experiencing London, but there's so much to experience, and vice versa with graduate school and USC as a whole, right? Like you have to make the efforts to engage and make the efforts to be a part of the things like and you don't, it kind of goes back to Liam's earlier question as well about trying to find what your position is or what, you know, and it doesn't mean that you won't find accidents where you're not looking for, you find the thing you're not looking for, but it happens because you were looking for something else, right? And because you were looking, you discovered something else, and it's that active act and that sort of, you know, constant motion.
I have a twofold question. So a lot of you talked about like fabrication and model making. And this year in particular, it's been a challenge as like most of us, like we don't have access to the fabrication labs. So part A is, how would you recommend, like for us and the incoming students, like just immerse ourselves in model making with just our surroundings? And then part B is, how do you find the balance between the tectonic like experience, like such as model making and fabrication, and the digital component, right? When now everything is like going more towards like, you know, like in all our studios, like we're making videos for client pitches, right? Like you also like include a video, like so like how do you yeah, like or have you found a balance in some way?
I'll tackle part one. Oh, sorry, Banaz, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Erik. I'll go after you.
Okay, I'll keep it quick because you're probably much better positioned to answer this than I am. So for part one, I would just stress that as an architect, it's kind of the nature of being an architect is that no matter what your environment is and no matter where you are and no matter what your resources are, you're equipped with the skill set and the curiosity to create and to build with what's around you. So I think we kind of keep echoing, like, don't look at these things as disadvantages, but leverage them as advantages. And I think this is another one where you can really start to look at how you create your own environment where you're currently working, how you start to use it as a means of experimentation, how you don't just assume that fabricating a model means going to use a laser cutter with a prescribed set of materials to set them up in a prescribed way based off of a prescribed software. So start to use it as a way to really experiment and, you know, have some fun with it. I think there's a lot of potential there. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Banaz, who probably has some much more inspiring things to say.
No, Erik, that was great. I think definitely agree. I also want to say that, first of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that there are crisis that like many of the material type of research is facing at the moment. So every architecture school, every design school that doing some sort of digital physical fabrication is facing this. So we have to find sort of innovative way to deal with this. And this might mean that we have to use different type of materials that maybe you can handle yourself at home. or find innovative ways that you can produce things from maybe simpler way of production and experimentation with materials that you can handle on your own resources. This might mean that maybe there would be opportunity for exploring, for instance, with like, let's say, kirigami and origami, like papers and materials that they're easier to handle rather than larger fabrications. But that's a sort of, I would say, like a concrete concern that we have less access with larger scale fabrication workshops. And I think also at the same time, I think in a way, maybe it is the time to get more advanced in digital part of the projects. So if you want to invest, let's say, on coding and programming, or let's say on learning, let's say AI and machine learning systems, this is the time that you can actually invest on the digital aspects of the project. And then later on, as things get back to the physical, then you start doing that. But I definitely also think that there are opportunities that you can explore based on limited resources, either using cheaper materials and materials that you can handle on your own. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a fascinating discussion. I really want to thank all of our panelists for being here, both the alumni and the students. And I do want to say I'm not ending the event right now. I'm ending the Zoom portion of the event, because what I would like to do is I'm putting a link into the chat for everybody. It's a murmur room, which I'm calling the virtual Watt Courtyard. Which would be the post-event mixer, which is a murmur room, which some of you have seen and been in before. But this is where we go back to the previous comments about USC and networking, and actually give everybody a chance to, talk one-on-one or three-on-one, or however you want to do it. Basically, for those who are not familiar, Murmur is a proximity-based video chat. Like Zoom, except that you only can hear who is within. Is it not working, Chelsea?
I haven't tried this one, but I've had. We'll see if it works.
Okay, we'll see if it works. Hopefully, it does. But what it should be is a virtual proximity-based chat, which means that you will show up as a circle with your video square or your video circle, and then you'll see a gradient fall off where basically you can hear whatever is within that gradient fall off. So the closer you are to people, the more you hear them. You can drag yourself around the room and move from conversation to conversation. You can draw walls to make dividers. You can put each other in boxes so they can't hear anybody. You can, I believe last time the graduate program did it, people drew a bar, and so everybody hung out at the bar. Yeah, so that's that. I think I'd like to invite everybody to join the Murmur Room. And before we sign off, just want to say thank you to all the alumni for coming back and sharing your stories with us. This is really, really great. Really enjoyed it. The students that are on the panel, you guys were fantastic. Great conversations. Really, really pleased with how all of this went. And I will see you guys in the virtual Watt Hall or Watt Courtyard. Bye.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.